A woman is on the road and looks at her watch. She complains that she is already late and needs to get to downtown. But the problem is that no car is passing by, and she says that she can't lose her job interview. Minutes later, a car passes on the road and she waves for him to stop, but the car passes right by. Minutes later, an old car approaches the woman and stops next to her while she is watching everything with a bad face. A man gets out of the car and sympathetically asks if she's okay, and she confirms. The man asks if she wants a ride to downtown, that he's going there to work on his car, and he happens to see her on the road and asks if she wants a ride. She asks if it's a ride to downtown and the man says yes, but she thinks she doesn't want to take a ride in an old car like that. And the man calls her attention asking if she's listening to him, and she says yes, and says that she doesn't need the ride, because in fact she is waiting for a friend, that her friend should be arriving soon. The man asks if she is going to be alone in the middle of the road. Someone can pass and do something bad is dangerous, so he insists that she accept the ride and that they arrive quickly in the city, but the woman thanks for the help, but he doesn't need it, he can leave now and goes with God, and the man says he has to go, because he has a time to arrive, but tells her to stay with God and be careful in the middle of the road, so the two say goodbye and the man leaves in his car. When she is alone, she complains, saying that she would never make it to the city in that old car, that she would be ashamed. Minutes later, the woman regrets not having accepted the man's ride, as it only takes 10 minutes for her to arrive, and then wonders how she would get in that car, as it would be bad for her. Soon after, a man approaches on a bicycle and stops in front of the woman. He greets her and she greets him back. Then he asks if she accepts a ride and the woman asks how she would ride with him, and the man says that she can go on the bike seat, but the woman thanks him and says she doesn't need to. The man asks if she's sure, because it's better than walking to the city, and she replies that she's fine and thanks. Then the two say goodbye and the man leaves on his bicycle. Sometime later, she already realizes that there's no way out and that's why she's going to be late, but a truck approaches in next to her too, but now it's different. The car she sees is big and beautiful. The woman is then excited about the possibility of getting a ride with this driver, who seems to have a lot of money. A man inside the car greets her and asks what she's waiting there, and she replies that is waiting for a ride, and the man says he's going to town and he was watching her wave, and asks if she's been there for a long time, and she replies that she's been there for a long time, that she actually has little time to arrive at her appointment. The man says he can solve her problem, but first he has to go to the city to pick up his employees and he will fill the car with people and his employees have a lot to solve in the city, but he goes back there to give her a ride and asks if it can be like that, and she asks if she can wait for him, and he says yes, and says that she can wait, it won't be long, that he's going to the city, he's going to leave the people and comes back to her, and the woman says it's okay and she'll wait for. And the two say goodbye until the man leaves too, and when she's alone, she's excited to know she's going to arrive in town with a big car. She cheers and says it looks like it was worth the wait and it won't be a problem if she waits a little longer for that man to come back. Minutes later, the man enters his office and says he needs to organize things, as he has scheduled a job interview. Then he looks for some data on the person he is going to interview. Then he remembers the woman who was on the road. He feels guilty and tells himself that he cannot leave her alone on the road as it would be too dangerous. He yells for his employee to go to his office, and soon his employee enters the office under the boss's authorization, and he asks the employee if he is having a lot of work, and the employee replies that the day is very calm. The boss then says he was on the road and there was a woman who asked him for a ride, but he said he had to sort out a lot of things and that he would pick her up later, but he ended up forgetting and he's going to have a job interview now, so he asks if the employee can pick up that woman for him, and he agrees to help the boss right away. Then the boss says he will give him money to put gas in the car. The employee says he doesn't need it, but the boss gives him $50 to put the gas. The employee thanks him and says he'll be back in a few minutes, and the boss says he's a good worker and proactive. When the boss is alone, he says that he needs to advance his side, otherwise the woman will be on the road all day. So he looks at his watch and sees that the interview is close, but the candidate hasn't shown up yet. The woman complains that she's already 10 minutes late and wonders where the man who offered her a ride is, so she says it's okay, because if she gets in that big car, she will get the job. Soon after, two men on a motorcycle approach the woman. They greet the woman and say they are going to the city and ask if she doesn't want a ride, but she says she doesn't need to and that she is already waiting for a person, and one of the men insists saying that the three of them can go on the motorcycle. The woman continues saying that she doesn't need to and thanks them in the same way, and the two men leave, and the woman thinks those two men are weird. Minutes later, as she waits for that man and his amazing car to return, the clerk returns and she hopes he doesn't see her, but to her bad luck, he seems to be heading straight for her. The man screams at her through the car window and the woman hopes he doesn't stop near her, but the man ends up approaching her and parking the car in front of the woman, and she says she's running out of patience. The man gets out of the car and asks if her friend didn't stop by. She replies that in fact her friend did, that he will come back to get her, that he will be right back, so he says that his boss told him to go look for a woman there. The woman finds it strange and asks what his boss is like and what car he has, and the man replies that his boss has a black truck, and the woman replies that he actually passed by, that he is actually her best friend, that they have been friends since childhood. He offered the ride and she accepted, but she thought he would pick her up. The man says he didn't know she was friends with the boss, and says it's good to know, and asks if she wants to go with him, and she says yes, so he says he's going to open the door for her. She, with an obvious look of disgust, decides to get in the car, only because she won't be able to wait any longer. The woman tries to open the door from the outside and the man explains that it only opens from the inside. He opens the door for her and says she can come in, and she gets in the car feeling disgusted. In her thoughts, she wonders what she's getting herself into. That car is an old can, all dirty and falling apart. The man then asks if he can go now and she says yes, so he accelerates that old and funny car. Minutes later, he finally parks the car on the city street and tells her they've arrived, so the woman asks how he knew she had to go there, and the man replies that that's his boss's office and that he works there, and the woman says she has a bad memory and of course her friend works there, and wonders how she didn't remember, so she asks if he's there and the man says yes, and she can go upstairs if she wants. So she goes there and thanks the man for the ride, getting out of the car and closing the door, and the man watches her saying that this boss friend is very weird. The woman sees the truck in the office and realizes that it's a coincidence, because the same guy who was going to give her the ride is also going to be the one for the job interview, so she goes upstairs to enter the office. At the office, the boss complains that the candidate has not arrived yet, as she is 30 minutes late. Someone knocks on the door and he authorizes entry,